Thanksgiving always felt like stepping into a photograph: golden chandeliers, polished silver, and smiles that never reached anyone's eyes. My grandfather, Victor Morgan, sat at the head of the table like a king, his glass of wine glinting under the light. I was halfway through my mashed potatoes when his voice cut through the chatter. "Glad you're enjoying the college fund we set up for you, Anne." The room went still. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "What fund?" I asked. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, make sure to do so now. Also, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. For a second, nobody breathed. My mother's knuckles whitened around her napkin. My father coughed, muttering something into his glass. Even the chandelier seemed to flicker. Grandpa frowned, puzzled. "The fund we started when you were born. Your parents have been adding to it for years." My stomach dropped. I'd worked 2 jobs to stay in school, skipped meals to afford rent. "What fund?" I glanced at my parents. My mother's smile cracked. My father stared at his plate as if it held the answer. That was the moment something inside me shifted, quiet, but final. The dinner went on. The laughter returned. But I wasn't the same. Thanksgiving was over. And my silence ended with it. No one dared to look at me after that. The clinking of silverware sounded louder than words. My grandfather's smile had faded into something tighter, confused. "You mean they never told you?" he asked quietly. My mother's voice came out too fast. "Dad, it's just a misunderstanding." But it wasn't. I could feel it, a truth hiding in plain sight. My father shifted in his seat, his tone defensive. "Let's not ruin dinner with talk about money." I stared at him. Money. The same thing I'd begged them for last semester when my rent was due. The same thing they said they didn't have. Grandpa's fork touched his plate with a soft clang. "John," he said to my father, voice cold, "we trusted you to manage that fund." My mother reached for her glass, hands trembling. "It was for emergencies," she whispered. "Emergencies?" I asked. My throat burned. "Like my tuition? Or did the kitchen remodel come first?" No one spoke. The chandeliers hummed faintly above us, casting light on faces that suddenly looked unfamiliar. Grandpa didn't finish his meal. Neither did I. The family's golden image cracked that night, and I saw every secret glittering underneath. The car ride home was silent except for the soft hum of tires on the wet road. My parents sat in the front, pretending the night hadn't just fallen apart. I watched raindrops slide across the window like they were racing to escape. Finally, I said, "You could have told me." My mother's reflection in the glass looked pale. "Anne, it's more complicated than you think." "No," I said. "It's not. Grandpa set up a fund for me, and you spent it." My father's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "We did what we had to for the family. You wouldn't understand yet." "I understand enough," I whispered. "I worked double shifts while you used my future to fix a roof I don't even live under." No one answered. The windshield wipers kept time like a metronome to my anger. When we reached home, my mother turned to me. "Please don't tell your grandfather. He wouldn't understand." I laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "He understood more than you think." I stepped out into the cold night, rain soaking through my shoes. Behind me, the house glowed soft and false. That night, I promised myself something simple: the truth wouldn't stay buried. The next morning, I skipped class and went straight to the bank. My hands trembled as I slid my ID across the counter. The teller, a polite woman with kind eyes, typed for a moment, then frowned. "Could you repeat the account number, please?" I did. Twice. She hesitated, then leaned closer. "I'm sorry, Miss Morgan, but that account was closed 5 years ago." My heart stuttered. "Closed? By who?" She scrolled through the screen. "It says here, by your legal guardians." The words rang in my ears like a bell that wouldn't stop. 5 years ago, I was still in high school. My parents had cashed it all out before I even filled my first college form. Do you know how much was in it? I asked, though my voice barely worked. She nodded. Over $200,000. I left the bank with the printout folded in my shaking hand. Every zero on the page burned into me. All those nights I thought we were broke. All those times I apologized for being too expensive. On the sidewalk, the wind tore the paper from my hand, but I didn't chase it. I already knew what I'd lost. I didn't cry that night. I thought I would, but the tears never came. Instead, my anger sat quiet and sharp, like glass under skin. I locked myself in my room and opened my old notebook, the one where I'd written every shift, every tip, every dollar saved for tuition. Each number felt smaller now, swallowed by the truth. $200,000. Gone. Downstairs, I could hear my parents talking in low voices. My name floated up once, twice, then silence. I pressed my ear to the floor. She won't understand, my mother whispered. She'll get over it, my father said. It's done. Done. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, replaying every moment I'd believed them, every, we can't afford it, every, maybe next semester. By morning, my anger had cooled into something stronger. I didn't want to scream. I wanted proof. If they could steal my future in silence, I could rebuild it in silence too, and this time, every secret they kept would cost them something. I opened my laptop, heart pounding. If there was one thing I'd learned that night, it was this: revenge doesn't start with shouting. It starts with knowing. Saturday morning, I waited until my parents left for errands. The house felt emptier than ever. Too clean, too quiet, too fake. I went straight to the study. My father's desk was locked, but I'd seen where he kept the spare key. It hung behind a photo of us smiling at my high school graduation, the same smile he wore when lying came easy. The drawer clicked open. Inside were folders, neatly stacked and labeled with dates. I pulled them out, one by one, until the floor was covered in paper. Bank statements, receipts, contracts, all the details of lives I was never meant to see. Then I found it, Morgan Education Fund. The last withdrawal was dated 5 years ago. The signature, shaky, but unmistakable, was my mother's. My chest tightened as I flipped through page after page. New cars. Home renovations. Vacations. All paid in pieces of my future. I sat there for a long time, surrounded by proof that the people I trusted most had stolen from me. But the shock didn't last. I stacked the folders, sealed them in a box, and hid it under my bed. My anger had finally found direction. Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was rereading the documents. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't expected, Grandpa. I hesitated before answering. "Hi, Grandpa." His voice was calm but heavy. And I couldn't stop thinking about what happened at dinner. Something felt wrong. "Your parents have been avoiding my calls." I swallowed hard. "Maybe they're just busy." He sighed. "Busy doesn't erase a college fund." My fingers tightened around the phone. For a moment, I wanted to tell him everything, about the closed account, the fake smiles, the forged signatures. But I wasn't ready. "Not yet." "I'll figure it out," I said softly. "You shouldn't have to," he replied. "Listen, Anne. If something's been hidden from you, I'll find out. You deserve honesty, not half-truths." His words lingered long after the call ended. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope, small, but real. I looked at the folders under my bed. I had proof, but Grandpa had power. Together, we could uncover everything. I opened my notebook and wrote 3 words across a blank page. "Tell him carefully." This time, the truth would speak, but on my terms. By Monday, I couldn't stop thinking about Grandpa's voice, steady, certain, like he already knew part of the truth. But if I was going to bring him proof, I needed more than papers and guesses. I needed the whole picture. That night, while my parents watched TV downstairs, I slipped back into the study. The glow from the hallway lamp stretched across the floor as I typed on my father's computer. The password was easy, my birthday. Email after email filled the screen. Most were boring: bills, bank updates, store receipts. Then I saw it, a message titled, "Transfer Confirmation, Morgan Holdings Sub-Account." I opened it. My breath caught. A second account. Different number. Different bank. Same names. And right there in black and white. 200,000 transferred, labeled reallocation of educational assets. I printed the message, every word shaking on the paper. So that's where my future had gone, hidden behind fake terms and fake love. I shut off the computer, heart pounding. I didn't know how far this betrayal went, but one thing was clear: my parents weren't careless. They were calculating. And I was done pretending not to see it. Revenge, I decided, doesn't need noise. It needs timing. The next morning, while my parents chatted about grocery lists and garden repairs, I ate my cereal in silence, nodding like everything was normal. Inside, my thoughts moved like chess pieces. If I confronted them now, they'd lie. If I told Grandpa too soon, they'd twist the story first. I needed them to expose themselves, in front of him. So I waited. At school, between classes, I made notes in my phone. Steps. Details. Triggers. I'd gather enough evidence to make them confess without realizing it. My plan wasn't about yelling or screaming. It was about control. That night, I printed copies of the documents, the emails, the transfers, the closed account. I sealed them in an envelope and wrote one word on the front: truth. Then I hid it behind the lining of my backpack. When I heard my father's footsteps outside my door, I quickly slid my notebook under my pillow and pretended to study. He peeked in, smiled faintly. "You're working hard, kiddo." I smiled back. "Always." He left, and I whispered to the empty room, "You have no idea." The first move had been made. 2 weeks later, snow began to fall, soft, perfect, and cruelly peaceful. I was in the middle of homework when the phone rang again. Grandpa's name lit up the screen. "Anne," he said warmly, "I want you and your parents here for Christmas. It's been too long since the family's been together." My pulse quickened. Christmas at the mansion. Another dinner table. Another chance. I forced my voice steady. "Of course, Grandpa. I'll be there." He chuckled. "Good. And, his tone shifted, "don't let anyone make you feel small. You're stronger than you know." When the call ended, I just sat there, staring at the tiny blinking light on my phone. Stronger than I know. He had no idea how right he was. Downstairs, I heard my mother on the phone too. "Yes, Dad invited us," she said, sounding nervous. "We'll be there." I smiled faintly. This time, I wouldn't come as the quiet girl with questions. I'd come prepared, calm, and patient, with truth wrapped tighter than any ribbon under that tree. Christmas would be our reunion. But for me, it would be something else entirely. It would be the beginning of justice. Christmas Eve arrived, and the mansion looked even more imposing than Thanksgiving. Snow glistened on the driveway, and the golden lights reflected off the windows, hiding the cracks I now knew were beneath the surface. I adjusted my coat, zipped it up, and stepped inside. The familiar smell of cinnamon and roasted turkey hit me, but it felt colder this time, sharper somehow. My parents greeted me with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. My father's hand lingered too long on my shoulder, my mother's laugh sounded rehearsed. Grandpa was at the head of the table, silver hair gleaming under the chandelier. When he saw me, his face softened. "Anne," he said, "I'm glad you're here." I nodded, holding back a shiver, not from the cold. The table was set perfectly, as if nothing had changed, but I noticed everything: the wine glasses, the polished silverware, the tension in the room. I slid into my seat, eyes calm, notebook tucked under my coat. Inside, every plan, every piece of evidence waited quietly. This dinner would not be like the last. I was no longer the quiet granddaughter. I was ready. The greetings were polite, but the warmth was gone. My parents' smiles were tight, their voices higher than usual. Every "Merry Christmas" sounded like a rehearsed line from a play I didn't audition for. My cousins ran past, laughing, unaware of the tension that thickened the air. I forced a small smile and nodded to them. I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to watch, to listen, and to wait. Grandpa's eyes met mine across the table, calm and unreadable. I gave him a subtle nod, letting him know I was ready, but also that I trusted him to stand where he belonged. The conversation began with safe topics: the weather, work, trivial complaints. My parents dominated each thread, their words polished but hollow. I noticed every twitch, every glance, every subtle flicker of guilt when the room's laughter shifted just slightly. And all the while, the envelope in my bag rested quietly, waiting. I ate slowly, deliberately, savoring the irony. The same table, the same food, the same sparkling chandelier. Only this time, the warmth of family wasn't mine to claim. This Christmas, I reminded myself, would not be for celebration. It would be for truth. The conversation kept spinning in circles, harmless topics, polite laughter, but I noticed everything. Every glance my parents shot at each other, every hesitation before they answered Grandpa's questions. Their practiced cheer was fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of a table. I sipped my water slowly, pretending to check my phone, but my eyes never left the room. Uncle Henry talked about his latest project, Aunt Lila gushed about her new car. My parents laughed at the right moments, nodding, careful to seem natural. I traced the rim of my glass with a finger, letting them believe I was distracted. I wasn't. I was cataloging every slip, every tension, every word that betrayed them. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, watching the room quietly. I caught his glance and gave a subtle nod. He understood, even without words. This dinner wasn't for small talk. It was a battlefield. I had the weapons. The documents, the evidence, the truth. And all I needed now was the right moment. A single spark could ignite the room. I was ready to strike, quietly, strategically, and with eyes wide open. Halfway through dinner, the moment arrived. My parents were laughing at some trivial joke, oblivious, and I felt the weight of the envelope in my bag. Slowly, deliberately, I slid it across the table. The clatter of the folder hitting the polished wood cut through the chatter like a knife. Every head turned. Eyes widened. My mother's hand froze midair, glass trembling. My father's fork clattered onto his plate. I kept my voice calm, even. "Since Thanksgiving, I've been asking one question," I said, sliding the folder closer to the center. "What fund?" The room fell silent. Only the faint hum of the chandelier filled the space. Grandpa leaned forward, eyes sharp. My cousins stared at me, unsure what was happening. I opened the folder slowly, letting the papers fall open. Emails, transfers, statements, all black and white. Every withdrawal they'd made. Every lie they'd told. Every step they took to erase my future. No one spoke. Not a whisper. Finally, I said, steady and clear, "You used my college fund for yourselves." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. And for the first time, the family's golden image looked fragile and broken. The air in the dining room had changed. It felt heavier, colder, sharper, as if every lie they had built was collapsing on their heads. Grandpa sat upright, eyes fixed on my parents. "You stole from your own daughter," he said quietly, each word cutting through the tension. "From your own blood." My mother's lips trembled. "And, please, it wasn't meant to hurt you. It wasn't meant to help me either, I interrupted. I spent years scraping by, working nights, skipping meals, while you spent my future on everything but me. My father's face darkened. We did what was necessary for the family. No, I said firmly. You did what was easiest for you. Grandpa rose from his chair, his gaze sweeping the room. I trusted you, he said to my parents, voice steady. I trusted you with her life. My mother tried to speak, but the weight of their actions hung in the air. My cousins looked from me to their parents, wide-eyed. The golden halls no longer felt warm, they felt like a courtroom. I gathered the folder, slid it back into my bag, and stood. My legs were steady. Tonight, silence wasn't mine to endure. It was theirs. I stepped into the night, and the first snowflakes hit my face like tiny shards of glass. Cold, sharp, cleansing. The mansion behind me glowed warm and golden, but inside, it was hollow. The truth had been spoken, and silence was no longer mine to carry. The driveway was empty, snow crunching under my boots. My breath came in clouds, trembling but steady. For years, I had believed in their control, their version of reality. Tonight, I realized how small I had been. And how powerful the truth could be. I didn't look back for long. The family I thought I knew sat inside, facing the storm I had quietly delivered. The weight of my parents' betrayal would linger, even beneath the chandeliers and cinnamon candles. In my apartment, I laid the folder on my desk and stared at it, every page a scar, every transaction a reminder. But anger had changed, it was no longer just heat. It was focus. It was strategy. If they thought silence protected them, they were wrong. Tomorrow, I would begin. Piece by piece, I would reclaim what was mine. And this time, no one could stop me. A week later, a thick envelope arrived, sealed with the official stamp of the bank. My hands trembled as I tore it open, afraid and eager at the same time. Inside was a letter that made the world feel steady again, or at least, more mine than theirs. The investigation had begun. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every forged signature, all under review. The bank made it clear, if fraud was proven, my parents would be held financially responsible. I read the words over and over, not with joy, but with a quiet relief. Justice rarely feels like fireworks. It feels like breathing after being underwater for too long. Grandpa called later that day, his voice calm and proud. And, there's something waiting for you at the bank. It's for your start, not your survival. I smiled faintly, imagining what he meant. After years of fighting to stay afloat, someone finally believed in me. Not as a burden, not as the quiet granddaughter, but as someone who deserved every chance she had been denied. I went to the bank, heart steady, and took the first real step in reclaiming my future. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, I held the first piece of my victory. Word spread fast. By the end of the week, whispers followed me wherever I went, at the library, the cafe, even in the halls of my college. People glanced, curious, some sympathetic, some judgmental. I didn't care. My parents had spent years hiding their lies behind smiles and excuses. Now the truth was public, and they couldn't undo it. I watched from a distance as friends and neighbors slowly pieced the story together. The same people who had praised my parents' family values now shook their heads in quiet disbelief. I kept to myself, letting the gossip swirl around without touching me. The point wasn't revenge in the streets. The point was reclaiming what had been stolen. Grandpa came by one afternoon, walking through the snow to my apartment with a small envelope in hand. "People will talk," he said, handing it to me. "Let them. You've done nothing wrong. Only the truth matters." I opened it to find a note. Strength isn't measured by silence. It's measured by facing what others hide. I nodded, feeling the weight of it settle like armor around my shoulders. For the first time, I walked without fear. My parents' secrets no longer controlled me. Christmas night, the mansion felt different. The chandeliers still glittered, the cinnamon scent still lingered, but I walked through the doors with a quiet confidence they hadn't seen before. My parents were already there, standing stiffly by the fireplace. Their smiles were thin, forced, brittle. They didn't meet my eyes. I carried my bag lightly, the folder of evidence resting inside like a loaded weapon. I approached the table slowly, letting my steps echo. "We need to talk," I said, calm and steady. My father frowned. "And, what is this about?" I placed the folder on the table, letting it slide into the center. "About the college fund. About every dollar you took from me. About every lie you told to hide it." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "And, please. No. You've had your chance to explain. Now it's time for truth." Grandpa stood behind me, silent but solid. I caught his eyes, approval, reassurance, and unspoken strength. My parents exchanged glances, realizing that this time, their words would not protect them. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the family I thought I loved. Tonight, I was the one in control. The room fell into a heavy silence. My parents stared at the folder, their faces pale and tight, as if each page exposed a truth they couldn't swallow. My cousins looked on, wide-eyed, unsure whether to speak or hide. Grandpa's gaze swept the table slowly. No words, just quiet judgment. I felt it like a weight pressing down, but it wasn't mine to bear. It was theirs. Finally, Grandpa spoke, calm and deliberate. "I trusted you both to protect her future. Instead, you used it for your own comfort." My mother's lips quivered. "Victor, we..." "No," he interrupted, voice steady. "No excuses. She trusted you. And you betrayed her." My father's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, closed it, and then sank back into his chair, defeated. I sat still, letting every moment stretch, letting the truth settle in. The golden room, the sparkling silverware, the laughter that once masked deceit, it all felt fragile now, like glass ready to shatter. I had not raised my voice. I had not pleaded. Yet justice was here, silent, undeniable, and unstoppable. And in that quiet, I realized, the power of truth was sharper than any scream, heavier than any punishment. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. The folder was still on my desk, a quiet reminder that I had begun reclaiming my life. The snow outside had melted into gray slush, but inside me, something bright had started. I made my way to the bank, the one Grandpa had called me about. The teller handed me a cashier's check, $20,000, and a note in Grandpa's handwriting, "For your start, not your survival." I held it for a long moment, letting the numbers sink in. Enough to pay off part of my student loans, enough to breathe, enough to finally feel the future was mine. Later, I opened a new account under my name only. No signatures from anyone else. No loopholes. Just mine. Every step I took after that felt intentional, powerful. I didn't rush, I didn't celebrate loudly. I just moved forward. Grandpa's words echoed softly, "Strength isn't staying silent. It's speaking first." And I had spoken. For the first time, I was free to walk toward my future on my own terms, and every stolen moment, every betrayal, would no longer define me. The sky was pale, the kind of gray that makes the world feel new and uncertain all at once. I adjusted my borrowed cap and gown, feeling the fabric heavy with years of struggle, yet lighter than ever with the truth finally in my hands. The crowd cheered as graduates stepped across the stage. Friends and strangers clapped, but my eyes searched for the ones who mattered most, Grandpa and Grandma. They were there, smiling proudly, hands clapping in unison with everyone else. My parents weren't present. And I didn't care. Their absence felt like freedom. When my name was called, I walked forward steadily, every step echoing the years I had endured without their honesty or support. I held my head high, knowing that the folder, the bank letters, and every sleepless night had led me here. Grandpa caught my eye as I received my diploma. He gave a small nod, approval, pride, and silent acknowledgement of my strength. Finally, I smiled, not for anyone else, but for me. I hadn't just survived. I had reclaimed my future. And as I turned toward the crowd, I realized something. Family wasn't always about shared blood. Sometimes, it was about who stood for the truth, and who would never steal your future again. Spring came early that year, and with it, a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. My apartment smelled of fresh flowers and coffee, small comforts that were finally mine to enjoy without guilt. I opened the bank statements, confirming my new account's balance. Every dollar represented independence, every number a victory. The folder of evidence remained tucked safely in my desk, a reminder of what had been stolen, and what I had reclaimed. Grandpa stopped by that afternoon, bringing homemade cookies and a warm smile. "Anne," he said, "you've done more than survive. You've taken control of your life." I laughed softly, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease for the first time. "It's just the beginning," I said. He nodded. "Exactly. And you don't have to carry the past anymore. Learn from it, but don't let it weigh you down." I looked out the window at the bustling city below, sunlight glinting off glass buildings. My life was mine to build, brick by brick, choice by choice. For the first time, I believed in the future. And this time, no one, not even family, could take it from me. Even with the folder safely stored and the bank account secured, the quiet moments were the hardest. Sitting alone in my apartment, I thought about the years I had spent bending, pretending, and swallowing truths that weren't mine to carry. But in the silence, I realized something powerful. Strength wasn't always loud. It didn't come from shouting or proving something to the world. Strength came from endurance, from seeing the truth and acting on it without fear, from reclaiming what was yours quietly but deliberately. Grandpa's voice echoed in my mind. Strength isn't staying silent. It's speaking first. I didn't need anyone's validation. I didn't need apologies or reconciliation. I had evidence, a future I controlled, and the knowledge that I had acted when it mattered most. For the first time, silence wasn't a cage. It was armor. I placed a hand on the folder, feeling the weight of years lifted from my shoulders. Every paper, every transaction, every stolen dollar, they were all witnesses to my resilience. And in that quiet, I smiled. I had survived. I had spoken. And I was stronger than ever. The city streets buzzed with life, but I moved through them differently now. Light footsteps, steady heart, eyes open, unafraid. The folder was gone from my desk, safely archived. Its existence no longer defined me, it had served its purpose. Grandpa had called that morning. "Anne, you've earned this," he said. "Go live without looking back." I smiled, realizing he didn't just mean my finances. He meant my choices, my independence, my life. I walked past the familiar streets near campus, remembering the nights I had spent exhausted, worried, and small. Every step I had taken since Thanksgiving had been a climb, but now I was standing on the peak, breathing deeply, the wind sharp and clean against my face. For the first time, I wasn't running from lies, betrayal, or disappointment. I was moving toward opportunity, toward dreams that were truly mine. Family had taught me lessons, some painful, some unexpected. But in the end, it wasn't about blood. It was about truth, strength, and knowing when to walk away. I lifted my face to the sun, letting it warm my shoulders. The future stretched before me, limitless, mine. And for the first time, I felt it fully, freedom. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.